All right. I actually thought I was going to have a little bit more time than that, but it's perfect. So I would just take off my glasses. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are today in this world. I would just really love to introduce you to one of my new best friends. His name is Zachery Michael. He is the founder of the Intuitive Rose Leadership Codex. Zachery and I have had the pleasure of being in each other's orbit for probably like a few years or so. And one of the things that I have actually noticed and loved about Zach is he is probably the most authentic person that I have seen. And what that's actually done for me is wanted and ignited a fire within me and deep within my heart and within my bones of remembering that uniqueness is absolutely beautiful, and it's actually who we are, and it's actually being unique and being who we are authentically is really needed in this world at the moment, and for us to really stand in deeply of who we are. And so I am so excited to introduce you to Zachery. Welcome.
Hey everybody, hi.
Oh my goodness. And Zachery, you're the first person that I've had to interview. And the reason for that is that, as I mentioned before, we've just got a truck going though. As I mentioned before, it was one of your, you've ignited a fire within me of a remembering of what it's like to be authentic. And actually, one of the first people that did that was Jonathan, is it Van Ness, the guy off Queer Eye for the Straight Guy? Like,
The queer guy with the hair, yes. Okay, Jonathan.
I
Work.
love it. So you two have very similar like codes, and the fact of you're just like, this is who I am, and I'm just going to stand up in that. So it's really beautiful. So thank you. Have you always been this authentic?
Um, what's coming through for me is I've always had a lot of audacity and verve, yet not always authenticity.
Right.
It's been that's my journey, was this idea of like this journey of really experiencing audacity and verve and transforming it into like genuine authenticity and not just like sexy chaos. Like
Yeah.
that's my journey for sure.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So can you explain um, what the difference is between, or can you explain, um, explain the difference between audacity and sexy chaos? Audacity and verve, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, sure. So, in my experience, audacity, is birthed from desire. The big difference between authenticity and just like raw audacity is that authenticity is like a stable owning of the entirety of your desire, even when you don't even know exactly what it is. And audacity is just showing up in a place of like, this is me, like it or leave it, fuck you if you don't. And the tricky thing about audacity and verve, because verve is kind of like enthusiasm, right? So a
Yeah.
lot of times when we see audacity, we see like, and I'm a queer person, so I'm a gay cis man. So in our culture, we have a lot of like yas queens and, a lot of flippant behavior and like, yas and, all the like the hand signals and the voguing. There's lots of audacity in my community, but not always like authenticity.
Mm.
And the thing about audacity is we do need to be audacious to be authentic. But audacity is only one half of really who we are. And a lot of times, if you're somebody who has a lot of verve, an audacious verve, like you're just an exciting, sexy, charismatic person, you just show up and throw your boobies everywhere and just like let it all fucking fly out. It's not really like it's not regulated. Like you're actually not regulated. You're just throwing yourself out there and letting the world see it. And sometimes what that gets us stuck into is this pattern of like revealing it all, which is extremely overstimulating, and it can be seen as arrogant because it's not authentic, because arrogance is the 3D version of authenticity. And then we get these experiences that are incredibly victimizing, where people make fun of us or they attack us or we get rejected. And then we don't because we're not regulated, we don't really feel empowered to really make sense of the full experience, which then can lock us in this story that we are somehow to blame for the
Yes.
reflection. And I
Yes.
love how you asked me before the call about my sexual journey as a teenager who was very
Yeah.
sexual. And I was very visible in my community because I was molested in a cult when I was a very young child. And I know this is where it really started for me. And the reason why I got molested was because I was playing with dolls. So I was targeted by a cult leader because I was displaying gender nonconforming tendencies. This was back in the 90s. You know, it was not, I mean, I'm not sure if it's ever been a safe time to be queer, but definitely not then. And in that cult, I was basically, there was a predatory behavior and I got molested there. And for many years afterwards, I dealt with that in a lot of different ways, especially when I started hitting puberty. I was very sexually promiscuous and um, I was very visibly queer. So like at school, one of the tricky things was that I was probably one of the only out people that was like very outly gay at my school. And there was a lot of people who didn't like that. And I was one of those young gay cis boys that dealt with this idea of being visibly queer as just like I was very audacious. And I guess feeling into it now, a lot of people did see it as authentic because it was the closest thing they'd ever seen to anything in real leadership. I didn't know I was a leader at that point because obviously in the fallen matrix in our cultures, we're not really praised for being unique or for being different, and we demonize it. And at school, I was, what's coming through me? Hey, Spirit, let me say this with love. I didn't look like a lot of the other kids. Like, I might, it's so funny to say this. I had gender non-conforming sexual traits as a child. Like, I was very hairy. My voice didn't really drop. It never really actually dropped all the way. And I looked like a very non-conforming person. And it really triggered a lot of the boys who were going through their own puberties because we would connect energetically, sexually, and there would be a lot of confusion. And because obviously, you know, it wasn't really, it was very threatening to these young boys developing identities to be seen as gay, and it was obviously so shamed. A lot of times I would get in these very interesting dynamics with other boys at school where, you know, they didn't like me. I mean, well, what's coming through me is they did like me, but we were sharing a resonance. We were connected, and they didn't like the connection. Felt unsafe. It was very charged and very shameful, and it was a leadership connection, but it was also very confusing. And I remember at school, I was going through sexual abuse outside of school too. But it's interesting I'm bringing up school right now because um, I got bullied constantly. Like I was bullied in school, I was bullied leaving school. I had boys that would come home, follow me home on the bus, and they would harass me at my house. And it was a very wild time because I was very sexual. I was very excited. I was very happy. You know, I had a lot of happiness and light. Like me and Rebecca share this. We had this beautiful light. And I wasn't really praised for any of those qualities. And I didn't, and I owned it with audacity, but not authenticity. And I
Yeah.
feel that going through my journey, it's coming through for me now, was going through my journey really helped me to realize that it's not enough just to stand out. You need to know what makes you unique, because a lot of the difficulties in my sexual trauma was that I would get, even when it wasn't physically sexual, even just being in a highly attracted situation with someone witnessing me and being visible in front of someone and having them hate me because they were triggered in their own bodies, it kind of tempted me to believe. I got lost in it. I would basically over-identify with the sexual charge of being in a high frequency of connection, but not see myself in it. And that's really where I feel like my standpoint of uniqueness is really coming into now, is that when we don't know what makes us unique, we don't actually feel our authority. And that's why, oh, I'm having an epiphany even talking about this. That's why being so sexual was so traumatizing for me, and being so like having that much energy, because I didn't feel authority being attractive. And let it move, it's okay. And the reason why I didn't feel authority was because I constantly identified it with other people, because my sovereignty wasn't in their field. It wasn't my job to heal these boys or to talk them through their identity. And those boys weren't going to tell me that either, because they didn't know. They were just boys growing up. They were scared. And we clearly, I'm not going to make too many assumptions, we clearly shared a lot of homophobic upbringing, which didn't really help. But it's like I had to go through this long journey of isolating to really feel my energy, because if we don't know what makes us unique, we don't feel our authority, our sovereignty is not there, and we're not going to feel, our leadership is never going to actually build traction, because it's never going to feel safe or ours. It's not going to feel like your leadership. And that feels like where it's stopping now.
So thank you. And there's a lot in there to unpack. And I think probably the biggest part, you grew up in, was it in, whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So it's in the northeastern seaboard of the US.
So for some, all right, so we just, can you hear the plane?
Oh, only a little bit.
I'll just let it go through. Okay, for some reason I thought that you might have been like that you might have been in like the central Bible Belt kind of place. But even then, I think going through adolescence is hard for anyone, like all of us. And I think it's really hard to see someone, or to see someone who knows who they are and is able to stand in their authority and go, this is who I am, and I'm unembarrassed, and I'm just that. And so I can so understand why people would be attracted and drawn to that, and also for them to feel confusion around it, right? Because it would just be, they would be wanting more and more. They would want to stand out. Or one, they would want to stand out in the way that you did. Two, they would want to have the ability to be able to, and I'm going to try it, unashamedly be themselves. And that's really hard for teenagers who don't know and are going through all the hormones. So that would have been really difficult for everyone involved, and you actually having to be the one that sort of experienced that. So thank you for sorry, I don't know what's going on. There's so many planes and now helicopters going over.
I don't even hear it, so it's totally
good.
fine.
Okay, so that's good. So thank you. So you talked about your sovereignty. So is this something that you've always just known? Like, I'm just wondering, because it took me years. So I grew up pretty much similar to you. I was very much out there. I was very in who I was, and I was like just loving myself and loving who I was. And it wasn't until I was probably about 20 and I was traveling overseas, and I knew that people, I triggered a lot of people. And while I was magnetizing them to me, I know that they were also wanting to sort of like protect me. So, hey, Beck, when you go overseas, don't be who you are. Don't sort of stand out. Step back, hide yourself, hide your light almost. And it took me many years after that to really kind of find again who I am and who I am naturally. And part of that was to come into my sovereignty, and part of that was to take full accountability for everything in me. And you mentioned your sovereignty. So when did you step into sovereignty?
I've always been so horny for what I've loved. I've always had a really interesting awareness of sexuality, even before I had puberty. Like, I'm not sure if it's because I'm an old soul or something, but I had a very nuanced understanding of what I liked. Like,
Yeah.
even though it's obviously changed in my physical development. And what changed for me between like just being like just wanting things, like having a lot of desire and like seeing things and being like, I want that or I want this, was like realizing that freedom isn't just about doing whatever the fuck you want, which is very audacious. It's
Yeah.
about being committed to your integrity. And when we don't have those healthy boundaries, that's just chaos. Like, it's
Mhm.
abuse. And I
Yeah.
actually learned that sovereignty piece in sex. I remember one time I had a sexual encounter with a man that it was just so, it started out consensual and it went fucking sideways. And I remember leaving the counter being like, oh my God, I just got raped. I didn't even realize I got like sexually abused. And he didn't, it just, between both of us, I could tell he was just as abused as I was. We had a really deep subconscious block. And
Yeah.
it just hit me. I'm so grateful for this man. I love him so much wherever he is right now, because it was so traumatic. And I realized like, freedom is not just doing whatever you want. Like, you really have to be accountable. Like, the way you mirror it back to me is accountability and integrity and being committed to being in that integrity. And that's where I really feel like uniqueness really started to become a concept for me, because we're all going through this process of realizing what sovereignty and uniqueness and authority actually mean for us. And most of the time in the fallen matrix are so hijacked that we end up rebelling against them, because they've been so hijacked and fucked up that we go, oh, I don't, like, it's like we deny authority because it's like authority abuses us, right? And then we
Yeah.
deny our uniqueness because when we stand out from others, they judge us because they're scared too. And then in the middle of that, sovereignty becomes completely invisible because we don't see it mirrored back to us in our cultures, and the authority seems to be the problem. So especially for those of us who are high frequency souls, we all go through the journey of having to fall down and fuck around and find out, and then realize, wait a minute, everything that I was taught was a construct. It was not really actually how things are. And we start to sequence them together. We start building geometries for ourselves that represent cycles and momentums in our lives, whether it's revolving around, I see a lot of cis women in my space, their menstrual cycle. That's an essential one for a lot of cisgender women, is building the momentum around your cycle, which is obvious because your cycle is so physically taxing, and it's just a natural way to build healthy rhythm. For cis men who have healthy sexualities, or just reframe healthy, they have a lot of sexual energy and they're constantly, horny and ready to do their
Yeah.
thing. They have a very fast cycle. They wake up in the morning, they have an erection, which is super healthy for blood flow. It mirrors the sun. They go through their day and they have these tiny little cycles of sexual energy that get them motivated. And we go through these processes of reclaiming our sexual energy to build momentum. And that's really one of the reasons why sexuality has been so shamed in the fallen matrix, because if you can claim your sexual energy, first of all, you might not ever want to fuck again, because not everyone's actually coded to want to have physical sex. And you'll start seeing that sexual energy as something that you can actually literally build the foundation of your own reality with on a particle level. And to answer your question, that's where things changed for me, when I realized my sexual energy was not just this like wild abandon of pleasure. It was actually something that was something I had to have a lot more responsibility with. And that I wasn't having fun having sex because I refused responsibility. And that's when and that's how I learned it, was that I wanted to have fun fucking, and I wanted
Yes.
to have fun loving what I loved, and not just with sex, but just anything, food, clothes, my personal expression. And I realized the only way that was going to make sense for me was if I took responsibility for it, and I stopped blaming people, and I stopped making people responsible to create all that safety for me, especially when they couldn't. And God bless these people. Not all people who abuse you are necessarily evil fucks.
No.
God bless them.
No.
Sometimes they're
No.
just sick, or they don't know, and they're
Yes.
also going through things like that too. So that's where it's stopping for me. So yeah.
So there's so many things in there, and I think we might need to do another one, another podcast, because I really would love to unpack, because the sexuality aspect, and that when you mentioned that there are so many people that don't have sex now, so like there's so much in that which I could just keep on asking 1,000 questions, but I think it would just take away from what I want to talk to you really about. So what I heard from you is that how you became sovereign and how you were able to take back your power and authority was through sex. Mine was actually through my emotions. So that's where I had I had to take full accountability and responsibility for every part of my emotions and my thoughts. And that was probably where one of my awakenings came from. So talking about awakenings, and the other thing that we've been talking about and that I've noticed that you've been posting about is around rebirth and the death portal, which also brings into, again, the accountability and responsibility for what's going on as we navigate those portals. So would you be able to speak into what's your interpretation of the death portal and rebirth?
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you and I are mirroring the balancing of masculine and feminine, where we're both mirroring back to each other the divine sovereignty piece of how a lot of people generally deal with those death and rebirth portals. And I'm so grateful to really advocate for the divine masculine in that with my experience. For me, what I'm feeling really particularly in our current death portal right now is the acceleration of contrast between, what is really real and what has only been real because we've allowed it. And what's coming to mind immediately is the political situation that's going on in the US right now, and how many people, particularly during this election, have been so triggered and rage. And what's coming through me is that anger really is a 3D version of embodied self-care. And we're dealing with death and rebirth all the time. Get the current theme or like the subset of that frequency that we're going to be experiencing in this current transition is like really having to see how flimsy the fallen matrix really is and how it's going to look like paper. What used to feel like concrete is going to look like paper mache drenched in like fruit juice. It's going to be so fragile. It's going to be so dissolving. It's going to be exciting because for those of us who are here for a mission, it's going to be easier than ever to shine your light because it's going to be so much fucking room. And yet everyone else who's been feeling so sexually ungrounded, which just is another way of saying like they're just physically not in their bodies, their channel's not in their bodies, it's going to feel like fucking apocalypse. The apocalyptic like conspiracy stuff's going to really increase because people aren't really grounded. And I really feel like why I'm using so many sexual terms and I'm cussing so much in this transmission is because words are deeply
Beautiful.
connected to our bodies.
Yes.
And it's not a coincidence that a lot of the politics right now is centered around women's bodies and abortion and
Yes.
trans bodies and gender transition. And really, the sexual domination that we've seen been playing out in our countries on the planet as we're saying it now. Because right now, and it's interesting you brought up Jonathan Van Ness because you said I remind you of him,
I love
is that
him.
he's very non-conforming. He's a very queer, visibly queer person. And what I'm being led to say is that there's so many arrivals of gender labels, right? So like the
Yes.
plethora of many genders and the plethora of sexual identities, because now more than ever, there are so many different pathways to express creative energies than before. And these labels they're just coming up logically because people are trying to make sense of all this new availability. In this death and rebirth portal, everything is going through such a fundamental shift. The consciousness has ever been more flexible than ever. It's like this is the most flexible the consciousness field of our collective has ever been. And in that, there's going to be a lot of strange, like almost like whiplash. Like, like when you have a rubber band and it
Yeah.
just expands. And then all of a sudden people let go of it. And it's like, you get almost like hit with these pain points. That's what this death and rebirth cycle is going to feel like, where it's going to be like a lot of really intense up and downs that are not very long. Even like from COVID, like there was that COVID thing and all the stuff coming out that COVID was basically a giant scam, which so many people knew about, and it was like a conspiracy. Like that happened very quickly. People were expecting it to be like, lasting forever and ever and ever. And it's like that that whole resurgence and then dying down of like the popularity of the investment that's transitioned, we're going to be seeing a lot more things being revealed to the public eye, including extraterrestrial contact. There's going to be a lot of like interesting it's just going to be a very strange yet exciting time of like all this contrast, and that's really what the transformation is going to feel very, it's going to feel like chaos for a lot of people. And I feel like that's why the uniqueness conversation, and we just came off with Renate, the uniqueness, sovereignty, and authority conversation is so important right now, because if you don't have those three things online and you don't know what those are, what those feel like for you, it's going to be really hard to navigate. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. And the other thing which has been coming for me is just the knowledge that I don't believe it's going to get any easier, or life at the moment as we know it. I think that the new normal is going to be that it's just going to be this constant change, change, change. And we are going to have to just find ways of moving with it and going through. And I think the thing with that is just how can we move through it with as much ease and grace as possible. And one of the things that you had mentioned is about embodiment. And I actually think all of this is key to our body. Like we need to go through our body first before we can do anything. So you also mentioned about regulating. So what are some tips or tools that you use to regulate your nervous system, to calm down your body, to and to become embodied?
So I recently started reclaiming a regular practice of masturbation. So like I'm recently going through a big transition in my body's expression. My body is aligning more to how it used to be before I because one part of my journey as well was I was at one point taking hormones, and I was living full time as like a trans feminine person. And that changed my relationship with my sexual energy. Well, the cycle would changed a lot, but I was still very sexual, but it changed a lot. And now I'm recently coming back into a pretty consistent rhythm for those of us who are with peen, and we have a very traditional male sex drive. And I realized that one of the main ways that helped me to maintain emotion regulation was just not even masturbating to finish, but just to touch myself sensually and let myself feel a little more activated than
Yeah.
I ever had before. Because when I was on hormones, I got to experience a lot of what women experience in their arousal. It's a lot slower. Like your turn on rate is
Yeah,
very
yeah.
like you have to really build it. It's a momentum. The foreplay is really about that ritual, getting your body prepared for the actual. It's like a phase and a phase and a phase, which was very different for me
Yes.
from being a young cis boy who was just, I could look at a tree and suddenly burst into orgasm. It was very, very, it was like hot all the time. And I realized that if I could build my discomfort with the in between of like being aroused and then finishing, that it really helped me to understand what like the big themes that would come up in my sexual channel, which was hard. That was hard for a long time. Like talking about basically having boys harass me at school for the sexual charge between us. I had a lot of like somatic responses. There were like rape responses. I used to get scared that I was going to get like physically assaulted for sharing sexual energy with someone. And it took me a long time to get there, but masturbation helps. But even if you don't like masturbating and that's not something that you resonate with, dancing helps.
Yes.
Um, I love a nice walk. Nothing can be a nice, because I feel like I'm in a granny phase of my life where I just like to get outside and walk, like just like 5 minutes. Not like 20 hours, just a nice 5 minute walk around my neighborhood when it's sunny out, even when it's raining out, just to get yourself into surrounded by different energies. Even if you walk the same route every day, nature is different every second. You're not walking the same route every day. And even if that can make a huge difference for the depression so many of us are feeling, because depression is just inspiration at a lower frequency. And the only way that depression is going to round out into a healthy channel for you to get new ideas is if you move and you change your environment. Even if that means you take a poop in a different bathroom in your house. Because like we're depressed and we're really dense. Like we get in these routines that basically lock us in
Yeah.
that very limited channel. And that actually helped me. I go back and forth between my house and my parents' house, and actually it's just that little movement really helps me. And I talk about this with my brother all the time. He's like, how do you deal with depression and like the density? And I said, literally, if all you can do right now is go to the bathroom in a different bathroom in the house, do that. Change anything you
Mhm.
can do different, please do it, because it's about doing the different thing that associate your body will associate as a new pathway, and it will help to move the energy. Because if you just sit there and poop your pants and sit in it and then go, I'm depressed, it's like you're just gonna you'll kill yourself in that. People die in that state.
Yes.
And during this time right now, I'm closing it out. This death and rebirth portal is going to come with massive amounts of grief, which people are already feeling. And that grief is going to come with depression. And depression's not going to move if you refuse to move.
Mhm.
And that feels finished right now. Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. And I find that hilarious. As a mother, I would really love my son to come home just to go to the toilet. Um, One of the things that you've mentioned a few times, sorry, my glasses are
Oh,
a few
sorry.
times,
Yeah.
um, is around like this rape energy around the abuse. So, what have you done to bring back safety into your body and to embody one's safety, but also regulate your nervous system so that you can kind of stand in your power and stand back into the truth of who you are?
So first of all, I'm just really sitting in solidarity with those of us in the field who have dealt with sexual abuse, which is pretty much all of us. And what the first thing that really transformed my relationship with sexual abuse, and specifically predatory, like it was like a long term, like you have to recognize that rape is not just the physical act. If you've been sexually abused, there was many other field energy dynamics that got you there. Even as a child, I've had to go back into childhood memories of adults actually stalking me, and preparing my body for sexual abuse, and people in my field not creating safety and not looking at the signs. There were signs that there was adults that were trying to groom me, and they didn't do anything. And we need to remember that when we're sexually abused, it is not happening in a vacuum. There are so many structures of people not taking responsibility, not wanting to be in leadership, that basically creates a huge negative space for all kinds of things to happen. And what really helped me was really owning the fact, especially as a highly sensitive empath, that like I really was present for all the abuse. It wasn't just the climax of the act. It was like the ritual that got me there. And even like at school, like I never actually had sex with these boys physically, but because we shared all that energy and they didn't know what to do with it, and they were so violent, and people let them be violent. The laws at the time did not actually protect me unless they physically threatened my life. So they did get suspended a few times because they threatened to kill me, but they were allowed to basically harass me in the hallways, to scream at me verbally in the hallways in front of all the students. So not only was I getting like harassed by these boys, people were witnessing me. Other children were getting abused too by watching me get abused. Because which of your children were gonna stand up against these five horny boys literally trying to attack one boy? None of those kids were gonna do. I don't blame any of the kids who watched it, because it's abusive for everybody. And honestly, our culture didn't really support my safety as a queer person. Like, in the adults, I had adults pull me aside after I graduated and said, like, we wish we could have done more for you, but the law didn't let us at the time. Um, and it was really awakening for me, because like at the time, like being at school and being in dangerous school was like just the cherry on top of the shit I was dealing with at home.
Yeah.
But dealing with rape is really about like, first of all, owning the fact that this was a long-term process. Even like if you just got raped off the street, which is not never just random, by the way. That is always supported by a larger consciousness. Really owning the fact that like this is not just an isolated incident, and that your abuse was just your fault or something. Like this is a shared responsibility,
Yeah.
because I held a lot of trauma for many years in my body, even as a child, that it
Yeah.
was somehow my fault because people weren't paying attention. And God bless my parents. They were doing the best they could. They didn't know. And they were gaslit by their environment not to pay attention and to let things happen, because it was religious, because there was lots of these fallen codes that let these men that were sick basically do whatever the fuck they wanted. And I just want to let you know that there's really no easy answer to healing from sexual abuse. And the only way that really got me through all that trauma, because there were so many layers to it, was really recognizing that this was not an isolated incident. There were many people involved. It's never just the one person. It's never just one person. And that my body is mine. Doing anything I could do to start going, what is my body actually feeling? And getting radically deep in that feeling and like moving it. I had rage for many years, which was so natural for what happened. And what helped me create safety in that state was admitting I was so angry that I couldn't even move. I was so angry. I didn't know what to do with all the rage I had. And being like, I don't want to put this on anybody else because it's like I don't want to, right. Part of what helped me heal was realize that I decided that I wanted to be sovereign. I wanted personal responsibility. I wanted to be healed, and I wanted to be authentic with what happened and move through it. And I got help. Just like anybody else, I went to therapy. I was in and out of hospitals in high school. I did what it took to survive. There was times where it was really low for me, and I fucking did the work. So when you hear people just talking about quantum leaping and timeline jumping, these things are real. And you may also, your authentic journey may also take you into other structures to walk through. And keeping it fucking real. Do not gaslight yourself about what you're currently feeling. Don't try to skip your process because that just scams you in the end. And we're with you. Every single person who's ever been through sexual abuse is doing the same work that you're doing in their own unique way. And you're not alone. And that helped me. People saying like, it happened to me too. And I don't need to hear all the details or know who did it or I don't need people to explain themselves. If you said you were sexually abused, I believe you. I had people I had my own family turn on me when I was 15 and I finally came out about getting molested and they couldn't handle it. My family, some parts of my family, they betrayed me because it was too shameful for them to admit that they were participating in child sex trafficking, basically, child predation. And they didn't, they let me down. They couldn't do it. And I just want to say that you standing up for yourself as a grown adult for your inner child and saying this happened, that's really what helped. That's really what started it. And that's really what got me through the worst parts of my life was saying, I can't control anyone else's response to my truth. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep myself alive, to keep myself alive and to get the help I need to get through this. Even if, and I made some really rash decisions. I had to cut my family out for many years and they hated it. Trust me, my leadership was not celebrated. My leadership moves were not celebrated. So, and I just want to let you know that as you're making these moves, it has to be about your health. It can't, when you're dealing with sexual abuse, it really can't be about getting the justice you think you deserve in the collective, because guess what, honey? You may not get it for a long time. And because really people being held responsible for what they did is not going to stop the fact that you got abused. The cult leader who abused me, he passed away a couple months ago. And even before that, I had reclaimed my body from that situation. But, you know, a lot of people thought that if he had gotten arrested or indicted or whatever, that it would have made it better. And the reality is, when you're someone who's dealt with sexual abuse, people getting punished for that is not going to make the pain go away. Vengeance looks cute on paper, but it's not going to actually move the energy for you. And you're still going to have to walk through it. And what am I ending with? What I'm ending with is that your momentum for what you want in this situation is the biggest deciding factor between being stuck in the suffering and healing. And now that I'm reflecting on my life, I'm like, wow, Zach did a lot of fucking work. It was a lot of work. I kept myself alive in impossible situations, and I'm still in leadership. I'm still smiling with a smile on my face. And I showed up, and it wasn't easy, and I'm being real about it. And I hope that as you hear my voice and you You hear the years of pain as it leaves my body. But you don't know what you're made of until you find out what it takes. Because one day you're going to wake up, if you keep going and you keep building your momentum, one day you're going to wake up and go, I did that. I did that. This is my life, my sovereignty, my healing, my body. And I can't control what that person did with my body, but I can control where my momentum went. And I hope that really lands for everyone listening. There really isn't an easy answer.
There really isn't an easy answer. And firstly, I want to thank you for sharing. Secondly, I want to honor you for well, one, I want to say for choosing such a huge soul mission. Thirdly, I'm sorry that you went through what you went through. And I'm so proud of you for doing the work, and you are 1000% correct. It is not easy. It's actually very difficult, and it's a choice that we need to make day by day, minute by minute, second by second, to do the work and to keep on choosing sovereignty, because yeah, it is difficult. And the years that you spent in anger is not wasted, like, because what it actually has allowed you to do is to stand into your beautiful leadership and stand into owning who you are. And yep, it was a journey, but you know what, Zach, what makes it even more beautiful is the fact that that you kept on choosing to stand up for you and to come back to you, and to show others, because unfortunately you're not alone, and you're one story of many, but you are a story that will be able to show people that this is what's happened. You're able to move through it, and you're able to come out of it with showing them your true, authentic, beautiful nature, because it's really beautiful. Like, it's really gorgeous, and it makes me honor your story and honor you even more, because sometimes those things are so hard that we get stuck, and we get stuck in the loop, and it's just easier to turn to alcohol, or turn to drugs, or turn to sex, or turn to distraction to not feel the pain. And you turned right into it. So thank you. And it's going to be beautiful for others to be able to follow your way. So, talking of leadership, I would really love you to talk to me about your offerings in the Intuitive Rose Leadership. So what are you offering? How are you sharing your gifts in this beautiful world?
Yeah, sure. So really quickly, in 2018, I woke up as a twin flame, met this person that was like everything. Like, we had this incredibly powerful connection, and then I got ghosted. And I went on this journey since about COVID, on this spiritual entrepreneurship journey. So I had this horrible breakup with this person I thought was like the one. And in the pain, I started getting downloads to start doing this business. I didn't know what it was, but at the beginning, I found this brand logo that was a rose with a little lens in it. And I was told this was my logo, and it began there. And I basically channeled intuitive rose leadership after obviously the long stretch of the story I just talked about. Right. And then after I basically had a really abusive situation with a business mastermind that I paid a lot of money for. And then I went to the priestess path with Mel Garrity, which was part of the healing journey of healing from the painful business mastermind experience with Mel. Was such a powerful healing catalyst in the priestess path. And I birthed this codex that basically maps your unique leadership in action. So, what I've come to discover after my long journey of momentum building, healing, and just leadership and authenticity is that we all have this 7 key code system that is a self-regulating Genesis code. So it's like it's your heart, and they emanate in 7 rays, like 7 colors, 7 chakras, these base 7 codes that stack a lot. And the Intuitive Rose Leadership Codex is basically the way that it's the first formation of your cellular structure being manifested in your entire life. So when we lead, every leadership move we've ever made is encoded with all of our uniqueness. And what I realize in this codex is that when you know how to track your unique codes, like the unique things that you do every single time, even when it's negative, then you can basically manifest and channel your leadership again and again. Because intuitive talks about going into the body, and then rose talks about obviously flowers, but the rose talks about like the present moment, and this idea that it already happened. It's a present, it's a timeless structure, because your body doesn't really register time in a linear way. And then leadership. So when we have these codes, we're able to tap into this channel of leadership that's always in integrity with our sovereignty at all times. And it doesn't replace the difficulties, yet it does streamline your experience in action. And what I find is that a lot of people are not looking for knowledge. They're looking for the things that make their lives real, because really all you're ever noticing is your uniqueness. Every single person perceiving me and Rebecca are only ever noticing us through their lens of uniqueness. And
Yes.
that's so important to realize that, because if you don't know what makes you unique, then you're kind of just wandering around, kind of feeling your leadership sometimes, kind of not. And it feels like a really bad game of trying to find your soulmate lover in the dating scene. Like, you know how dating is so hard because we're constantly, we're showing up in leadership, we're saying what we want, but we don't really know what we want until we actually come in contact with it. And the
Yes.
codex that I channeled is basically just one of those ways you can for sure get really, really deep on the ultimate uniqueness that shapes your whole life. And you can creatively wield these 7 codes to tell your narrative, build content, heal yourself, connect with people, and really just build the life of your dreams that works for you, because it's your life and not anyone else's. I hope that lands.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I love it. And so there's been so many things in here that you've been talking about that I just want to keep on coming back to, which I think I might get you on again. Um, but why do you think that people struggle with being unique? Why is it that you think? Because in my own mind, and through my experience as well, is so many people just want to fit in. Like, this is a society, this is where we're supposed to do, this is how, like, and we all just want to fit in instead of actually just we actually aren't meant to to fit in. We're meant to come down here with our own beautiful codes. We're meant to like code Gaia in all of our different and beautiful uniqueness. But there's a bit of people are sort of scared. I see. I see people being scared of stepping into their uniqueness. Do you find that at all?
Yeah, I feel like the main reason why we don't talk about uniqueness is because,
Mm.
first of all, it's been so deeply stamped out of the context of our lives in this particular 3-dimensional grid, and specifically the fallen matrix, not the third dimension, that we're kind of like my story. We're taught to believe that our authority is going to get us, we're not going to want to be intuitive if we're punished, right? So if
Yeah.
you're witnessing uniqueness as being worthy of being literally fucking murdered, tortured, harassed, sexually abused, it's going to, first of all, it's going to hypersexualize it, because even those kids that watch me getting harassed, obviously it looks so cool to be audacious and sexy and invisible. But if I'm getting harassed by whole groups of people and it could kill me, no one's going to want to, no one's going to want to do it. But then it's also going to make it seem so, it's like the celebrity culture. because really Hollywood hijacked this, because real celebrities, they're not really doing anything. Like, I feel like that's what Hollywood is, that like we're taught to commodify uniqueness and hypersexualize it, but it's also terrifying to us because in the fallen matrix, if you're really unique and you're really sovereign and no one can control you, then what would that even mean? Think, really feel in this, you guys. Like, if you were unique, which means that you're also sovereign and your decisions are have the highest authority in your world, and your authority was just what it was, like you just being alive had authority because it was your world, you'd be your own nation, your own country, your own universe. You would be something that nobody can really fathom because it's been so hijacked in this matrix. You'd be a god. You would be God. And I feel like deep down, that's why people are terrified of leadership and they're terrified of uniqueness, because it's a reminder that we are alive. We are not static beings. We are not ideas. We are living beings that are complex and yet highly organized and highly creative. And really, what am I feeling into? Until we can build communities that really tap into sovereignty as a currency and respect authority and handle duality and connection and really make a space for uniqueness, of course, people are going to want to avoid uniqueness. I actually don't shame people for that, because it took me many years of constantly being hyper visible as a leader to realize that, like, wait a minute, me being visible wasn't a bad thing. People just didn't know what to do with it. And, we're here. I'm here right now, just like all of you. We're high frequency souls here to bridge bridges of light into this planet. And that, our uniqueness is so sexy because it's risky. Trust me, even in a perfect world, you don't know what your uniqueness is going to bring. That's why people avoid it. Because if you're unique and sovereign and have authority, transformation is imminent. It's not just probable. Anything could happen. And, the trusting part is that, yes, we're sovereign and we'll be able to face it, but we can't be love, light, and clueless about reality anymore, you guys. Like, and that's why people fear uniqueness, because uniqueness isn't regulated. It can't be controlled. It can't be stopped, and it cannot be final. And, but if you're hearing me speak these words, and there's the block, the but, if you're hearing me speak these words, these codes are pumping like a heartbeat, like a heartbeat in your field, telling you, I want to be unique. I want to be sovereign. I want my authority back. I want my agency back. I want to have permission to just be myself. And I'm deserving of being accepted in that. And, things may change. I'm not gonna, like, when you brought up the question about the death and rebirth process, a lot of people are not coming with us because they chose that. And that doesn't mean it, just because we know that people chose what they chose, their unique leadership is still going to trigger us. It's still hard. Down here, when we have these bodies, we feel things so deeply. It's not just enough to know things logically. And that's why I feel like uniqueness is something that we avoid a lot, because it's going to push us to grow. And that's okay to be afraid of that. So that's what I was going to stop with.
No, don't. I love it. I love every part of it. So thank you, thank you. So Zach, tell me, you mentioned about what's included in it. So how many weeks is your codex?
Oh, exciting. So first of all, we do a 45-minute live session together where we go into the quantum and you basically speak your codes into the field. And every single one of those activations are totally unique because we're all unique.
Yes.
And then I take that activation afterwards while you're integrating, and I put it into a sacred text. So I channel it all over again. I organize it and I create the codex. And then we start a 6-month journey, because the average time period I've noticed for really high frequency people to integrate it is about 6 months. And we do a 6-month journey of 2 coaching sessions each month over that 6 months. So it's like 12 sessions.
Yeah.
And you talk with me. People talk with me. They share their experiences, and we literally map the codes. I show you how they show up in momentum. And when I tell you, once you know these codes, you're already an expert on them. You'll start having these epiphanies about yourself where it's like, oh my God. And things will just start shifting, and they crystallize. So you start to build a momentum that's totally sovereign. and your life just completely changes. It just transforms. It has to transform. So that's
So,
what happens.
so I'm literally getting goosebumps every,
Me too.
there's so much stuff happening. And um, you and I connected before, and we just had just riffed and had a conversation. And what I actually loved about that conversation was the fact that, one, as we were talking, you were able to reflect back to me exactly what I like, even though I didn't express it well. You were like, well, what I heard was da 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 da. And I'm like, yes, 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 that was exactly it. Like, that was exactly what I meant. And even just being in your space for that hour, it allowed me to, one, be fully seen, two, be fully witnessed, and three, what I loved most about it was receiving back this detailed notes about what you had written and expressed and what we'd spoken about. And I'm like, oh my God. So, that was just us having a conversation. So, is that part of what people are going to get over a 6-month course, or is there so much more to even what we had? Because even within that, just to have been seen, to be heard, to be witnessed, and then have it written back and shown to me was beautiful. And then secondly, what I also want to say, and I think I said it in the introduction, even just being in your space, even just witnessing you and being in your orbit for the last 5 months, just has also just brought out even more of me wanting to just own my authority, wanting me to own my uniqueness, wanting me to stand in there and go, actually, wait a minute, there's a lot in there. So is that basically what this whole 6-month journey with you is going to be? And sorry, and is it one-on-one or is it in a group?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. That sounds so sexy that you say all that. I'm so grateful it activates you that much, and
Right.
I'm part of that process. And what's coming through me is, guys, done are the days of gurus that we just listen to babble for hours and hours and hours and just kind of leave deflated. When you come into my world, I am your biggest fan, and all I do is listen and take notes. So my container right now, it is set up for one person because it's
Right.
so intimate and
Yeah.
it is so sexual. And like I just receive you and I just watch you and I'm like, I channel stuff out, I give you notes, I hear what you say, I receive everything you said. I am 100% safe space for the
Yeah.
entirety of you. And we
Yeah.
go through it and we just you tell me everything. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, like my whole thing is that the codex actually shows me how your life is constructed on all levels. So no matter what reason you come to me for, we can literally pathwork your whole life in every session. Business, relationships, your physical health, what you want to create next. If you're sad, if you're just coming to me because you're like, I'm sad, I'm fucking tired of being sad, we just can go through it together. And because you in the activation, I don't create the codes. You just tell me your codes. You speak them from your voice into my
Mhm.
field, and I wrote it down
Yeah.
so that I could remember it, and I put it in a codex, and then I give you some of my perceptions. So this whole process that I do with you is always about you, and I'm unconditionally listening, and I'm just telling you through my uniqueness what I'm noticing, which will only ever, I'm getting goosebumps, reveal the expert that you already are. No one's
Yeah.
ever missing anything. Like, I'm so grateful you shared that. You're getting so inspired by me because there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing. You lived your whole life with these codes. Every breath you've taken, every shit you've taken, every burger
Mhm.
you ate, every burger you didn't eat, every time you went to school, these codes have been following you your whole life. And there's no way you couldn't be an expert on every single one of them. You just have to see the momentum. You just
Yeah.
have to see the way it, and once you see that, you can't unsee it, you guys. You can't forget it. It's like it changes everything. And that's what I really feel like, because the word transformation was such a buzzword since COVID. And the problem with transformation is if you cannot see your uniqueness in action, you can't feel it, and you don't really claim sovereignty or want to be an authority, Transformation's never gonna fucking happen. If you can't see how it's already happened and be able to map that, then you won't have it. And this codex, this is like the birthplace of all transformation. And you can adjust it. We can change the words if you want. It's not like a definite thing, like, because we're just mapping your essence, right? Because we need
Yeah.
new earth leaders, we need structures that can keep up with us during this incredibly accelerated time. And many, I'm not going to say they're outdated, but many mystery school trainings that were really, relevant. Even astrologies, this is the frequency of astrology is changing so much and how we relate to it that we need things that can go deeper. And intuitive rose leadership is one of those things that really goes deep into you, you know? And
I
I
do.
feel like it's so personal because I love astrology and I love human design and I love a lot of these divination systems we have, yet they kind of still they require a lot of it's hard to find your uniqueness in those things because they're just so vast. And intuitive rose leadership is very specific to you. It's always about you. And I feel like when you have your uniqueness, all these things like astrology, human design, and even tarot and like other divination systems, they take on a whole new lens because now you know what makes you unique. And that will enhance your channel, your gifts, your confidence, your ease. People will notice it. Even like look at Becca glowing. Her sex appeal is on point. I barely even talked this beautiful goddess. And she's saying that just being in my field was enough for her to
Mhm.
feel like she's feeling the sex appeal of her own leadership. And she
Yeah.
looks amazing. You can smell it off of her. Yeah, she's
Oh,
beautiful and it's safe. So I hope
yeah.
that I hope that lands because I get so excited because it's like, let's bring back sex in a whole new way. Because it's like sex doesn't have to be this disgusting thing that is so like it brings up all these insecurities and it's so
Yeah.
exhausting and it's so
Yeah.
like boring. Like sex can be something that you're feeling when you're drinking a cup of water with lemon in it. You like look at her. Everything she's doing is sex. It's like she's so in unison with her leadership. And I want people to I felt so victimized by my creative energy for so long. And I just want people to feel free. I I just want people to feel as free as I feel these days to just be myself. And
Yes.
it is scary sometimes, but I think that makes it worth it. Taking the risks on my own uniqueness makes it so much worth it. And it's easier because I know what makes me unique and I know who I am. And that's really what I want to share with the people that want to work with me and that are coded in their souls to work with me because we need more leaders that feel confident in their own heartbeat. So that feels good.
1000%. And we also need new leaders who know themselves inside out, who fully accept and love who they are and are able to speak into that to allow others to step into who they are. So it's such a beautiful mission, Zachary. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then lastly, how can people find out more about the amazing Zachary
I
and
love that.
what you're doing?
Oh yeah, definitely hit me up on social media. My Instagram handles and most of my handles are Zachary Michael, just my name with a Z on it. We'll put links and everything all over
Yeah.
this. Definitely hit me up. I love like random messages. Like I love chatting and I'd love to hear what people are up to, what their needs are, and just hear their frustrations. I love hearing about people's darkness and their rage because it's just
Yeah.
so relatable. And I'm a safe space for it. I'm emotionally available for connection, and I am calling you. I'm advocating for that. You feel my advocacy frequency. I'm calling you all in. If you want to fuck with me in so many different ways,
Mhm.
girl, you should come. Let's kiki. Let's hang out. Yeah.
So thank you. And are you doing a masterclass? I think I've signed up.
Totally forgot. Yeah, I'm doing a masterclass on November 16th called Restoring Your Unique Authority. And definitely sign up. I can give you a link for it if we can put it beneath here. We're
Yeah.
going to be going into talking about sovereignty more, authority, and uniqueness and how they show up in our lives and what they are. We're going to be doing an activation so you can get your first key code in your Intuitive Rose Leadership Codex called Communion. It's your communion code. And we're going
Right.
to talk about the codex and we're going to have a journey together and really just connect. And I can already feel the activation of it, like, and feel the energy of what this looks like. And, but basically just educate you and show you the codex because it's kind of, I always think of it as so easy, but I guess it's kind of a lot of layers. So yeah.
Beautiful. And then one last thing before we head off. So, Zachary, if you could give one piece of advice. So it could be how you could live your best life, or how you could, like, if there was one piece of advice, if you went, here, humanity, here we go. This is like from my heart to yours. Go. What would it be?
You have not left your destiny. Your destiny has not left you. And if you know your uniqueness, all you can be is true.
Oh, that's almost like rhyming. That's amazing.
That's what I would say.
Thank you. And I think on that, this conversation is complete. Thank you so much. And I would actually love to do another one, because you have so many beautiful codes that, and even just around like the sexuality and around owning your sexuality and around being that is really beautiful. So I'd love to invite you back so we can speak into that some more. I see you, I witness you, I honor you, and I love you. Thank you so much. And
We did it. Wow.
stop recording.